Cashflow Diary podcast, episode 521.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because when it comes down to making your business bigger, better, badder, we've often equated that to also it being larger, as in more people, not just more sales, not just more services, but more people, more hands on deck. And we've talked a lot about that. Now, what if, and I'm just saying, what if the way to actually make your business better was not making it bigger? I found that concept a little intriguing, and today's guest would even go far as to say that a company of one is kind of enough. In fact, he wrote a book called Company of One, Why Staying Small is the Next Big Thing for Business. I'm, of course, talking about Paul Jarvis. Obviously, he's an author. He's also an entrepreneur and has done this for quite some time. I mean, some of his clients boast the names like Microsoft, Yahoo, Mercedes-Benz, and I'm sure you've heard of those. But what's more important is this idea of how one person, you could actually make this thing work. So I'm interested to find out more. I'm interested to learn, because who knows, maybe a few people get fired today. No, I'm kidding. At the end of the day, we're going to learn something, I'm pretty sure, because when it comes down to saying that a company can be just one, we're probably going to learn to be more efficient in some many interesting ways, and it could be just our thought processes. So let's get ready to listen, learn, and love Paul Jarvis. Paul, how you doing?
Hey, I am very good. How are you?
So far, so good. You've got my attention because we spend a lot of time talking about scaling and helping our entrepreneurs become bigger, better, and badder in various different ways. So I'm eager to talk about this concept. But before I do, I have to ask you the same question I tend to ask everybody the first time that they're here. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. For example, like Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, etc. And I think that superheroes and entrepreneurs have a ton of things in common. For example, occasionally I can envision myself, running around town, saving our customers one sale at a time. And yes, I'm probably wearing a cape at that moment. Also, though, like a superhero and entrepreneur has a beginning. There was a time where, say, Spider-Man was just a kid going to school, doing his thing, trying to take Mary Jane on a date, taking some photos. That's it. And then one day he gets bit by a spider, discovers that, I've got special abilities, and now he has to choose whether he's going to use them for good or evil. So my question to you is as follows. Before all of your high profile clients, before, your book, Company of One, or even your previous book, Everything I Know, before this idea, I will say ideas are infectious. So before this idea came into your brain and began to do its thing, what we want to know is, who is Paul Jarvis?
Yeah. I actually like the superhero analogy. So one of my favorite quotes is actually from Uncle Ben from Spider-Man, which is, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yes.
It's one of my most favorite things.
Yes.
And so I guess I was just an excitable nerd before I started. I didn't even want to be an entrepreneur, to be honest. Like, that wasn't even on my radar. I was going to get a degree, which I never ended up doing. I was going to work at a company, which I didn't end up doing for very long. I think I spent a year in university and then I dropped out, and then I spent a year working for somebody else and then I quit. And that was never the plan for me. And this is 20 years ago. So obviously being an entrepreneur kind of stuck. But I was just somebody who was interested in kind of the relationship between technology and people. That's always been kind of the driving force. Even when I wasn't getting paid to do any of that stuff, I was really interested in how we could use technology or how we could misuse technology to foster or to pull apart human relationships and interactions. And that's always been that's always been something that's been supremely interesting to me. And that's why when the internet started, I was like, this is actually kind of neat. This is something. And it seems so weird especially for younger people. Like, there was a time before the internet.
Right. What do you mean? You weren't born with an email address?
Exactly. There was no Netflix.
Yeah.
Times were hard.
Or do you remember when Netflix was like CDs or the DVDs that they mailed you? Yeah, okay. Good.
I got those.
Me too.
In the mail. They were like red. It was in like a red package.
Yeah, I thought it was the best thing ever. I was like, this is great. I don't have to remember to take it back, because I never did. Now, when it comes down to it, how do we go from, just wanting, because you said something that I think is interesting, relationship of humans to technology, humans and technology together. How does this, I don't know. I know technology can allow us to do a lot, but I'm still on I've got to figure out how the evolution of we get to, a company of one is good.
Yeah, so when I started, I was doing web design, and that's what I did for about 15 years, and that's why I worked with the clients that you listed. Okay. So that was kind of the start of my work, and it was funny. I was at an agency. I was a creative director at an agency, and I loved the clients. I loved the work. I didn't love the agency, so I was like, I'll leave here. I'll just go find an agency that's a better fit for me. So I quit. And the day that I quit, I started to get phone calls from the clients saying, hey, we really liked working with you specifically more than the agency. So wherever you're going to go work next, we'll just bring our business there. And I got a bunch of those calls, and a light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, what if I just work with these clients directly and don't actually go to an agency? Instead of writing a resume, I figured out how to start a business. And that's kind of how it started. And I did that pretty much. That was my sole focus for probably about 14 or 15 years. Was doing consulting and design work for these big companies, for entrepreneurs.
You realize you just made like half the people listening mad, because they're like, I'm out here in these streets struggling, trying to get some clients, and he just Yeah. But I hear you. You hit on in an accidental fashion that you were providing value in a way that you hadn't considered. So, but I have a question then. And even once that occurs, you still have to make a decision. That decision is, you know what? I have a superhero power. Apparently people are willing to pay me for it, even though I'm not associated with, any particular agency. Where did you get the courage from to not because most people will go, well, I'll take one or two, but I'm still going to go get this job thing because I'm, that what happens when they go away? What if I never get them back again? Blah, blah, blah. All of those types of things. How did you deal with that?
Yeah, and I agree. It was definitely some luck to start with a client list, but it was also that I was so focused on fostering the relationships and building demand for my skill. And so I think that was really important. And I also think that I don't even know if I had the courage to do it. I think I had fear, but I acted anyway. I think it's more of that I was scared to do it, but I did it anyways. And it was also a different time. Like when I used to tell people that I worked for myself in the 90s, it wasn't like nowadays when the word freelancer is everywhere, and a lot of people people didn't understand what I did. People didn't understand that it was a job.
So right? So you can't get a job? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And now it's a good thing that I'm unemployable kind of thing. But back then it was like it doesn't make sense. So I think What really drove me to it was that I wanted to be in control of the relationships that I had with my clients. I wanted to be the one to be able to say, like, I want to go above and beyond for this project, or I want to do exactly what I said I was going to do for the amount of money that I said I was going to charge. Like, I really wanted to be in control and have autonomy over the ability to just do good work for good people and make them happy. And that's really, like, that was a driving force. Like, even though I was scared to do it, that's what kind of drove me into it. And I didn't know if it was going to work. Like, to be honest, I had no idea if it was going to succeed or not.
Interesting. Now, you also realize that there's a group of people listening right now who were hoping that you had 12 points to guarantee ultimate success so that they could feel comfortable making that leap. So, so I've got to know, like, maybe it's in how you grew up or something. Where did you made the leap, man, and you did so against the headwind. Right now, we're talking with the headwind. The tailwind is so strong. Everybody listening, it's completely different. But you did it against the headwind. That suggests to me that you've always done things against the headwind.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely, like, who I am is a little contrarian or a little weird, and it's just always kind of been that way. Like, in high school, in school, I was the guy with different colored hair. Now I'm basically covered. I don't look like a business person. I look like, people say I either look like a fancy hairdresser or a bartender. It's like I'm covered in tattoos and I don't look like a business person, but I've run a business for 20 years and I've worked with corporate clients who I think are probably a little, like, weirded out in the beginning, but then I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm talking about. So it ends up working out.
I love it. I love it. I have the same affliction. I don't fit the mold or the stereotype that they're expecting most of the time. Mm-hmm. And I understand, my friend. I understand. So talk me through this evolution. I mean, if you're starting working, briefly, however briefly, for another company, and you're working, as your own freelancer, etc. Why? So was this just, hey, I've done it for so long? Obviously, being a company of one is fine.
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, it's funny because I've always kind of, and I guess I'll back up for a sec. When company of one doesn't mean literally one person. My business isn't one person. It means that we challenge the mindset that growth is always good, because growth is definitely good sometimes. Like, we need growth from zero to something. But the kind of thesis of the book and kind of the way that I've always run my business is that growth can make sense, but it doesn't have to. I think a lot of times people assume that the byproduct of business success is getting bigger. I think the byproduct of business success is having the freedom to choose whether or not and in what areas you do want to get bigger. Right. So I've always kind of thought this way, and it really just came down to me not wanting to manage other people in the beginning. I loved doing the work. I loved doing design and working with clients. And I always had a waiting list of 4 to 6 months, and people would tell me, like, hey, Paul, why don't you hire, like, a project manager and a designer and a developer and an assistant and all of this. And I was like, I don't want to promote myself out of the job I like into a job I don't want to do. So in the beginning, it was always that. Like, I liked doing the work, so I just wanted to figure out how I could make more money and be more efficient and spend less time working without having to build, like, a team and then have offices and all of those kind of machinations that go with, like, the typical track of growing a business. And it was just, I just didn't want it. Like, I didn't want it. That didn't appeal to me. And I wanted to find another way to find success.
Now, secretly you love HR. I know you do. I know secretly you stay up nights combing the blogs looking for HR related material. Yeah, no, I don't think anyone does that except people in HR. Yes. Now, you said something that I found interesting, and I want to understand the nuance, because you made a very clear distinction between just getting bigger, but having the control to choose which areas you would like to expand. Can you help us understand that more deeply?
For sure. So I think there's a few things there. I think a lot of times, and kind of the research that I found in the book kind of backs this up, is that a lot of people start their own business because they want more freedom, or they want, like, lifestyle is more important than a lot of other things.
Yes.
And I think when we start, we have these visions, especially if we leave the corporate world. We're like, I don't want to be shackled to my desk from 9 to 5 or for anything like that. Like, I want freedom, and there's like the Braveheart scene flashes across the screen. And we get started, and I think a lot of people talk a lot or focus a lot on failure. Like, what if this doesn't work out? What if this fails? But I don't think enough people think about the opposite of that, is what if this succeeds? And I think when we start to see success in our business, we get more opportunities, and those opportunities can definitely be good, but every opportunity has an associated obligation or a debt that could take our business in a direction. And it could take us in a direction, or a business in a direction, that maybe we don't want to go. Right? Like, I wouldn't want to say yes to an opportunity that would lead me to having a huge staff, or I wouldn't want to take an opportunity that would lead me to have to spend all of my time on the road supporting my business. I like traveling, but I want to travel for fun with my wife. I don't want to travel for work anymore. Right. So I think we need to kind of consider that, and we need to, if it is in fact our business, which it is if we're entrepreneurs, then we should be able to make decisions that are best suited for it really just comes down to that. It comes down to, how do I want to spend my day?
But like, Paul, I can hear someone screaming right now, but they've got 20 grand right here. I could take it off the table. What am I supposed to actually just leave that money behind?
Yeah, I mean, it depends, right? Like, I can't make those decisions for other people. And I mean, I think it comes down to, and this is kind of like the argument that I make the most of the time, is thinking about what is enough. So there's kind of two stages to that, right? There's pre-enough and post-enough. Pre-enough, if we don't have enough to make our business profitable, or to support, if we're owner-operators, to support our business and our life, then you do what you have to do. Like, if you need to pay rent and put food on the table, and there's money that could be yours, take it. Do whatever you need to do to make that happen, to get to enough. But where some business owners are, where they're profitable, they're living a comfortable life, that you don't have to say yes to everything. Because if you don't say yes to everything, or if you do say yes to everything, then there could be a time where you've said yes to so many things that something actually good comes up that you can't say yes to because you've already said yes to too many things. So I think it's good to keep options open once things are going all right, when we've reached enough, when we're comfortable with our lives, when our businesses are profitable, we can say, well, maybe I don't need to hire another people. Like, maybe the revenue that I'm generating is enough where if I had to work more to generate more revenue, I would spend less time with my family, or have less time to travel, or just be more stressed out and have more responsibility. So I think there's kind of a balance that we need to have, where obviously if you don't have what you need, you say yes to more things. That's just the way that it works. That's the way that business works. That's the way that jobs work. Yeah. But past that, I think that we have more choices than we think we do.
Oh?
Yeah. I think that we can say no to things that don't suit the purpose of our business. Like, if somebody offered me a speaking gig, I know that I don't like to travel. I know that I don't like to do speaking gigs. So I could say, even with like the book that just came out, authors typically go on speaking tours.
Yeah, this is kind of funny right now. This is ironic. I'm like, what?
I didn't do a speaking tour for my book. It's still selling really, really well because I'm doing other things, because I'm in charge of, even though I have a publisher who wants certain things for me and an agent who wants certain things for me, I've shown them that, like, look, I can do things the way that work for me, that I don't like. I'm also not big. Like, if I did a book tour, I'm not big enough in any specific area where, like, I couldn't be in, like, I just imagine, like, in my head, I'm in like Boise, Idaho or something, and just sitting beside like a cardboard cutout of myself, and there's like two people there. Like, it's not a good use of my time. Whereas I could do something, say, on the internet, and have like 1,000 people show up to a live event online, or do podcasts like we're doing right now, and talk to all of the listeners at the same time. So I think that we can make choices in our business that line up with our purpose.
Now, what's funny is that when you were talking about the book tour, just so you know, in my head flashed this scene, which honestly just sounds like the beginning of a movie adapted, Stephen King movie adapted, where the writers just, like, nobody cares about them anymore. And I hear you, because ultimately, I think you're the publisher, the agent. They just want the book to sell, and we don't necessarily have to get stuck in the methodology of how things are done, especially today when we can reach so many people. As you've said, it's funny that you said that, because I feel like I went through the similar thing. I was actually on the road speaking in cruise ships and everything, and then somebody said to me, and it was a simple thought. They said, you can reach more people online than you could ever fill in any amphitheater. And I'm like, huh, you have a point.
Well, exactly. This is why I write a newsletter. Like, I can reach 30,000 people, and like, I couldn't get 30,000 people into a stadium to see me, but they're going to open my email every Sunday when I send them an email. And this kind of speaks a lot to the book, where there's a lot of things in it that speak to scale without growth. So I don't need to get bigger or spend more time or hire more staff to reach more people on a newsletter or on a podcast or doing those sorts of things. So I can get my business can in fact grow in that way without me having to spend more on it or hire more people or have more infrastructure. It takes me just as long to write you an email as it does for me to write an email to my mailing list.
Mm-hmm. Now, clearly, we should have all, had our coffee today before talking to you. All right, now, because you said something else that my brain got stuck the moment you said it, because you said scale without growth. I need more. You've got to explain that deeper. Hey guys, thanks for listening as always, and I'm glad that you continue to support with each and every download and subscription and share. One of the things that I want to ask you, though, is where are you listening to me from right now? I know some of you, maybe you're on a treadmill, maybe you're washing dishes, maybe you're walking that dog, and some of you are actually in a vehicle driving right now. One of the fun things that you can do, get some of your time back, is begin to living a car-free existence. But even then, it can be a little complicated. So one of the things that I want you to do is I want you to go over to Zipcar. Go to joinzipcar.com/cashflow diary. It's a way that I am able to still go get a car just for a few hours, very, very simply, so that if I have a lot of errands to run and sheets to drop off and running to the short-term rentals, or if I just want to go for a long trip up to LA and back, etc., I can rent a car for a very, very short period of time. And the cool part is I don't even have to pay for any gas. Again, go to joinzipcar.com/cashflow diary.
Yeah, so I think definitely the newsletter is the bet, because my business basically runs off the back of email marketing. So that's a good one. So I can reach 30,000 people with the click of a button. And this is where I think technology fosters interaction with humanity, which we were talking about in the very beginning.
But are you just saying then that you're finding ways to where one person can reach more people instead of reaching more people by bringing on more people? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All
so
right.
Even in things like customer support, right? Like if we have a ton of support, sometimes businesses are like, well, I need to hire another support staff. Right. But what if instead you figured out ways to write, say, a better knowledge base where you're answering questions before people have to email, or doing like video tutorials where you can answer people's questions without them having to get in touch, and then your support queue goes down and you haven't hired more people, but you've helped more customers. So thinking of things like this is kind of where my brain has always been at, of like, well, how can we solve these problems without simply adding more to the solution? Because I think sometimes adding more is the easiest way to do it, but it's not always the best. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you do need to hire somebody or grow, but it's not always. It shouldn't be the default. We should think about it first and then make a decision.
Totally understood. Now, what happens in the situation where it's something that's just, it's a skill set that's, I'll say it's a skill set. There's a couple of situations. There's where it's a skill set that is completely outside your capacity. And then there's I could do it, but it's just not the highest and best use of my time. What say you there?
So like bookkeeping.
Oh my God. Yes.
Yes.
No, I mean, then sorry, any bookkeeper listening, we love you. We thank you, but we just don't want to do what you do.
I'm so appreciative of bookkeepers and lawyers because that's not something that I want to do. But I mean, like you can like I have a lawyer that I don't have to pay a ton. Like obviously they're expensive, they're a lawyer, but like they don't have to be on staff. I need them once a year to do my year end because I'm a corporation. So I need to have an AGM, which doesn't even really, like, I'm not even there for it. Mm-hmm. The lawyer just has to write up the minutes. And then I just need access to them from time to time. Same with my accountant. I need them once a year for sure to do my taxes and a couple times a year for advisement if I'm buying or selling a business kind of thing, or for compliance things like taxes. But I don't need, like these people, I don't need to hire on full time. I can use them in the businesses that they're at. I can hire them almost like freelancers to do the work, and I don't have to pay them when I don't need them, which is really good for my expenses and keeping those low. Even things like my copy editor or my audio engineer, producer, these people, I don't need to have them on full time. I can work with them as I need them, and I can pay them basically as I need them, and I don't have to pay them when I'm not using them. And they have other clients that they can work with in that space. And we can just have a relationship where I'm paying them and I pay them really well. I'd rather hire, and this comes back to the point about me not wanting to manage people. So when I'm looking to hire a freelancer, I always want to hire the best freelancer at that job, because that means that they don't require management from me. So I don't need to spend time training them. They already know their job. I don't need to check in on them. I don't want to micromanage anybody. I wouldn't ever want to be micromanaged. So they just do their work. So they cost me more, but they require less of my time, and I get a better end result from them. So it actually saves me money in the long term to always hire the best person, because then I don't need to do as much work to support them, and they're freelance. So I don't have to contact HR. I don't need to like take care of their like healthcare or 401ks or anything like that. They do all of that because I do all of that for myself. They do all of that for themselves. They charge a rate that reflects them having to take care of that, and I'm happy to pay it.
Yeah, I thought you guys had RRSPs. Not for
we do, but I thought your audience was mostly American, so I used the American term. But that's awesome that you know RRSPs in Canada.
Yeah. You also did the same thing when you were talking about your annual stuff that you got to do for your corporation as well. So I was like, okay, so yeah. Anyway, it's all good. It's all good. Yeah, by virtue of what we do today, we've got to know a lot of stuff about the other sides of the world as well, and cultures, etc. when it comes down to it. Now, there's something that you said that I absolutely love in terms of making sure that you said it a couple times. You don't want to manage people. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting here having this epiphany in my head going, I don't like it either. And I'm going, well, how could I? Like, there's a point at which, I mean, maybe I'm, how do you strike that balance between, I mean, because some people can be very expensive, and it's like, you know what? I don't want to manage people, but the only people that I could bring on for this service are the ones that need management. How do you deal with that? Like, I'm thinking specifically about a customer support department.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few things there. I mean, from the onset, and I don't think many people think about this. I think about this a lot. Is what would be before I start a project or launch a business, I always think about what would be how much would this cost to support and maintain. And so I've actually shut down and sold businesses because they took too much time to support and maintain. So for example, I would never start a business like Airbnb, because that can exist on a small scale. That can't have 2 properties total. Right? Like, you can't just go and like, oh, Bob's condo's taken, like, see you later, Airbnb. Like, that kind of business, if you're starting that kind of business, it has to be big. It has to be global. It's going to have a lot of employees, a lot of support, a lot of infrastructure. So knowing that I don't like to manage people, knowing that I like to run a small business, I would never start a business like that would require that kind of size and volume to be effective. I would rather start a business that doesn't require those things. So it's kind of like at the onset decision, I think, really, where I would rather think about, like, if this thing does well, like, what is it going to cost, or what is it going to take to maintain and support it? And I've sold, when I've been wrong in that assumption, I've actually sold businesses because I didn't want to have to deal with that. I knew that in order for, say, this one business that I'm thinking of to succeed, it would have needed to have a few support people. Like, as the sales volume increased, I would have needed to hire on the back end. And I wasn't really interested in that. So I ended up selling the business because there was a lever that could have been pulled by somebody else, where if they increased sales, they would increase support, but still end up making decent money. But that just wasn't for me.
Yeah, no, I get that. So that I'm also clear, when you're talking about Airbnb, the actual platform marketplace app company, correct?
Yeah.
And the reason this was, and I don't know if you knew this already or you just picked it randomly, is that a lot of our listeners, myself included, our business is short-term rental. So we'll leverage platforms like an Airbnb,
sure,
and we use our real estate in that various way. So that's actually, it's funny that you bring it up, is because that's the support department I'm thinking about, or one of the support departments I'm thinking about, because also the education company has the need for a stronger support department as well. But when it comes down to it, if you've never been, because there's something that you said, you're like, how much is this going to cost to support and maintain? I don't know, dude. I'm starting it. I mean, how do you figure that out? Like, what's your super secret to figuring that one out?
I don't think I have a super secret to figuring that out.
Oh, come on. You have a superpower. Tell me.
Yeah, I'm more like Batman. I have no superpowers. I just have a utility belt with lots of stuff. Yes. I think that the super secret trick there is to think about, at what size does this thing become profitable? Right? Like, if it won't become profitable until you reach an exorbitant volume, then you know that what I was talking about was Airbnb the company, not people renting out places on. Yeah.
Got it.
So Airbnb the company could not be profitable with two properties as a business.
Now I understand. Yes.
Yeah, they need to have probably in the millions now. And so I know that from the beginning, like, I want to focus on making companies and making products that are profitable at the smallest size first, and then can grow based on profit, not grow based on hopeful profit at volume. And that's pretty much the summary of the last half of the book, is how to figure out how you can be profitable without crazy volume.
Huh. Interesting. You've got some interesting ideas, my friend, that keep me thinking, and I'm just like, okay, but what about this? But what about this? But what about this? So you've got to have like some sort of weekly Q&A or something half the people who are going to read this are going to be feeling, but what about this? So what are they going to do, Paul?
Well, I really tried to employ, like, I know that's kind of and that this is actually how I wrote the book specifically in a way to answer, because I know people, like, everybody's going to have these questions that you have, that your listeners will have. So that's kind of the way that I wrote the book, was to try to pre-answer. And this is how I do support as well, is I try to pre-answer questions before they're asked, with the way that I teach, with the way that I share, with the way that I write. So because it is, like, I understand this is a very contrarian view. This is a view that not every single business person holds, but I do think that there is weight and value to it, because I've seen the opposite. Like, I've existed in tech for 20 years, and I've seen so many business just chase rapid growth and end up going under, not because their product sucked, not because they couldn't find a market for it, but because they were growing too quickly. And they were outpacing I think we get into issues when we're outpacing profit with growth, when we're like, oh, we'll be profitable later once we hit like 1 million customers or 10 million customers. That's scary, man. Like, that's scary to say, like, it's okay that I'm not profitable now.
In the hopes that money?
Exactly. But profitability creates durability. Like, businesses that are profitable don't go out of business. And like, that's what I want for myself, is a bit like, I like working for myself. I like running a business. So as long as I can be profitable at whatever like number it's at, as long as I can be profitable, then I know that my business can continue into the future, which is good for my customers too. if my business continues, then I can keep supporting those customers and they can keep staying happy with the business that I have.
Okay, well then let me pose a different question then, because
Sure.
here's the more real situation that's going through my head right now, is that a lot of our locations, so we can be profitable from unit 1 within about 30 to 45 days, and it's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And every unit has that same characteristic. Now are we talking something completely different? Because every time, think about it, every time you add a location, you're adding more profitability and, in your words, durability to the business. Why would I not keep adding more? And yes, when I add more, I'm going to have to add more staff, like, cleaners and support to that equation. How does that mesh with what we're talking about?
Yeah, so I think at cursory glance, I think that's smart. If you're building based on profit, that's smart.
Okay.
I have no problems with that. But I do think that you could potentially hit a point where it's taking too much time or it's taking too much management, and it depends on the person, right? Some people love managing, and
really? Where are they?
I know a lot of people. They're called like people now in tech, which is just silly. Yeah. But people that are good at managing people, they do exist. I'm not one of them.
Yeah, me neither.
But I think that there could come a point where if you're increasing, say your rental properties or that kind of thing, where most of your time is spent managing, where if you had stopped at a certain point, maybe you're generating a great amount of money. I mean, like Robert, Rich Dad Poor Dad, has been doing this for 20 years with rental properties, and him and his wife reached a point where they were making like 120 grand tax free on the rental properties, and we're like, this is like we can kind of stop here for a little bit because this is good. Like this is giving us the life that we want. So if we had to work more hours, it would be infringing on the life that we want, on the life that we're happy with. So why don't we just kind of like level off here for a bit and then reevaluate in a couple months or reevaluate next year?
I see.
And so I think in doing that, like I think growth from profit is great.
Got it. Now I understand. Okay. Yeah. Man, I was freaking out when we first started this thing. I'm like, how am I going? What? One person? What if he's right? Because that's really what's going through my head. And I'm sure there was a number of people who were thinking the same thing. I did it all backwards. Wait, what? I don't understand. But well, Paul, you're deconstructing the minds of entrepreneurs across the globe, and I like it. I like everything that you're doing now. And in fact, I'm sure there's a number of people who have listened this far who also like exactly this conversation and want to continue this conversation in some way, shape, or form. What's going to be the best way for them to catch up with you and find out what you got going on?
Yeah, so obviously the book, Company One, it's available everywhere. That has a lot of what we were talking about. And then I also write a newsletter called the Sunday Dispatches, which oddly enough comes out every Sunday. I've been doing that for about 6 years. pjrvs.com, or if you just Google my name, Paul Jarvis, you'll find it.
Excellent. Now, as we wind down here, I've got a question for you. But first, there's something that has been bugging me from the moment. I got to know, are you an Iron Man fan?
Yes, because his AI is called Jarvis and my last name is Jarvis. Yes, I wish I looked like Paul Bethany, to be honest. But.
Okay. I just had to know. I'm like, I can't, every time you say, I'm just like, I just keep having flashes of, Iron Man scenes. So anyway, I had to get that out. With that being said, though, as we wind down, I've got another question because I'm curious to hear your answer. It's going to probably be uniquely different than what others have said. There's a person or persons who have listened this far. They're going, you know what? Paul's right. I can make my business happen and I'm going to do this. And they've gained the confidence to make the leap and take the jump, or they're going, you know what? I will be able to grow our revenue I can scale without having to grow. This is a great idea. And you could have been the answer that they're looking for. They're at what I like to call the precipice of decision. And now that they're there, like I know, Paul, they have a companion, and that companion comes in the form of a voice, and it's a voice that reminds them of how it didn't work last time and why it won't work this time, and who do they think they are that they could actually make anything happen without more people. What is wrong with you? You're going to do what? And for some people, they're related to that voice. So my question to you is as follows. Let's pretend that today, now, they're going to do something different. They're going to follow through. They're going to do exactly what you say, and they're going to do so in the next 24 to 48 hours. Paul, what would you suggest that they do?
Yeah, I think that they should probably start to think about, well, how can I make money tomorrow? Like, what can I sell to one person that I can do tomorrow that can get the, because momentum is huge. Like, momentum is such a good thing. And this is, I think, where a lot of people see things not working out, is they can't build that initial momentum, because a lot of times, like, entrepreneurs like us, like, we have these big visions, we have these like ideas of like, we could make the next big thing. And that's hard. The problem is, like, it's good to have those dreams and those visions, but the problem is those things are hard. Like, though, it's very difficult to build like the next unicorn, the next $1 billion IPO company, right? Like, it's hard to do that. But if we focus, like, don't give up the big dream, but if we just think like, well, what can I do tomorrow to make a difference for somebody that they're willing to pay me for? And then if we do that, and if we start to work with, if we start to get, like, say, one client and then another client, and then the momentum builds, then we start to learn. And I think that the best thing there is, as the more we work with other people, the more we learn what they want, right? Like, when I started in web design, I was so awkward. Oh, I'm always awkward, but I was super awkward when I was talking about like pricing. When somebody was like, well, how much will it cost? And after doing it for well over a decade, like, I could have a conversation with anybody about price. I could say this thing's going to cost $50,000 and not blink an eye, because I had, it wasn't confidence that I had. It was confidence through experience. So by virtue of the fact that I had done 500, 600 projects, I could be super confident. I could charge more. I could do these things. But it was learning. Every single client taught me something. Every single client made me more valuable to the next person that I worked with. And in doing that, and just taking like small steps instead of just trying to do like an Olympic long jump, it's easier. It's easier just to do like one thing tomorrow. Like, if you want to start a business, find one person that is going to pay you to do something. Yeah. And then build off of that, instead of saying like, oh, I'm going to build the next Facebook, and spend like years trying to build some like huge software thing, which may or may not work out.
Love it 100%. I mean, the ideas that you are presenting, well, you can hear they stop. If you're listening, they'll stop you in your tracks. And I appreciate you championing them, being an example of them, and doing everything you can to make sure that others have the opportunity to assimilate them, because now those ideas can benefit many, many, many more people. And thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge, your wisdom, and your insight here with us today at the Cashflow Diary, sir.
Yeah, no, this is my pleasure. This is a great conversation. So thank you for having me on.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? That means get over to pjrvs.com. Why? Because you were intrigued. You're like, what did he just say? And you're going, I need to pick up a copy of this book. Yes, that is an appropriate feeling for you to have at this particular moment in time, because there's more that is inside the book than we had time to discuss. But at the end of the day, it's digging in, it's making it your own, and then it's sitting with these ideas until you can implement them. That's going to make the difference. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you guys today, but did you hear that profitability creates durability? I know I did. So let's go out there and make some profit happen. It's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.